Dude, I was in Turkey, and I'm right there on the Bosphorus, and I'm seeing all these boats come down, and there's this like beautiful castle. I was in Istanbul. Like there's this beautiful. I'm forgetting the name of the castle, but it is like where the Ottoman Empire. You know, the sheikh. What are they? The sheikh? No, the leaders of the Ottoman Empire. I forget what they were called. What were they called? They're the king, but whatever their version
emir,
is.
Maybe I'm trying to remember. The Sultan is the Ottoman. Yeah, exactly.
And
I know the one you mean, the Dolmabahce Palace, right on the water.
And there's all these ships coming down, and they're blank ships. And our tour guide was like, "You see those ships? Yeah, that's Russian oil."
Yeah.
It's like the oil's going to get there. There's sanctions, but you're going to strip the colors of. There's no flag flying, and it's going to go. And all of that is consolidated at the top. That's such an interesting. Like almost like how markets are going to decide themselves no matter what.
The Russian oil goes to India, and then when it gets refined, I was talking to a guy who works at the refinery. He was like, "Look, once it's come to our refinery, it's Indian. It's Indian oil."
Okay, so Turkey is an interesting example of this because Erdogan has this like stranglehold of power, right? Okay. And my understanding is that like Erdogan just gets a piece of everything, like off the top. Right, it's run like a mafia state. Like
so, those are the rumors. I think it's more his son-in-law. As always happens in these situations, the person on top is like, "I'm clean."
Yes,
my son-in-law. You got to talk to him if you want to get business.
Who did that in our country? was there an old guy that did that? Anyway, but okay. So, but maybe it takes a kind of, I guess, strongman leader like that in a way to organize a system that can thrive. So like maybe that is kind of what Iran needs.
Well, you know, the case of Turkey is very sad because the Turks were modernizing very rapidly. They were on a fast track to European Union membership and all this. And then Erdogan comes in, and I don't think he ever wanted that future for Turkey. He wanted it to be much more. So Turkey has actually in many ways gone backwards. Like what really modernized Turkey over the last 20, 25 years was the prospect of European Union membership. And Erdogan, and partly the Europeans screwed things up by saying you'll never get membership because you're a Muslim country.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they're a secular Muslim country.
Exactly. And I think it would have been possible to at least have some kind of associate membership or something like that. But by turning them down so dramatically, it made them turn east rather than west. And Erdogan kind of wanted that. He always wanted, he's always more.
Yeah.
And most of these places, I think what we don't understand sometimes is the religion is sometimes a charade. It's not completely a charade, but this is a power. These guys are power hungry. They want power. Look at the Syrian guy, okay? This Syrian guy was like he was to the right of Al-Qaeda. These people were like hardcore Islamic, fundamentally. The minute he gets into power, he's like, I want trade, I want commerce, I want to have good relations with America. And by the way, he signaled he's open to relations with Israel.
Wow.
Because, and he wants power. It turned out he thought 20 years ago, the way to power was to be an Islamic revolutionary. Yeah. Now he thinks the way to be power is a pro-American, pro-Saudi modernizer.
He's right.
Yeah. But these guys are, that just tells you, like, don't believe too much in, these guys are going to want martyrdom. People say that about Iran. I'm like, if these guys want martyrdom, why are they building up these huge bank accounts in Dubai? Like, that's not going to help them in heaven, right? That's going to help them and their families for their lives now and their kids' lives now.
So maybe you can use that against them. Like maybe if we know that's what they need, then you have to show them that the pathway to power is through better relationships with the countries around them. So
one of the hardest things about our relations with Iran, I think you're exactly right in thinking along these lines, which is, look, we need to be very tough on them in terms of none of these proxies, militias, terrorists. But if you do all the right things, there has to be an upside for them, right? And so every time we talk about the upside, people are like, you're giving them money, you're funding. First of all, it's all their oil money that we sanctioned, right? Like, it's like, but secondly, how can you have a negotiation where you say to them, do everything we tell you
and
to,
you get nothing.
And you get nothing? It's like, okay, why would I do all the things you want me to do then if I get nothing for it?
This is the tricky thing about geopolitics. This is because you're operating with people who say things that they might not mean, but they are the things that they believe will keep them in power.
Right.
But the things that they say that they might not mean are terrifying to people. So if they say that they're going to death to America, like I'm taking that shit serious.
Exactly.
I don't even know if they could reach America.
Exactly.
But if you say death to America, I'm taking that serious. If I'm Israeli and somebody says death to, I'm taking that shit serious. You can't begrudge people for taking threats seriously.
This is
While at the same time, if you are some form of like a geopolitical diplomat or negotiator, you have to know that what they really want, hopefully, or best case scenario, is power, just like the leader of Syria right now. And to assure their power will not be thwarted. And it's very difficult to trust, I would imagine, America in that, because we have thwarted it so many times in the past. Oof, that's a...
You put it very well. Like, think about even during the Cold War, you know, you'd have like these Soviet guys who'd say, we believe in worldwide communist revolution, the destruction of every capitalist society in the world, this, that, and the other. And then they'd sit down and say, okay, can we make a trade deal? Can we, you know, can we make a nuclear arms deal? Like, you know, they're operating at two levels. Like some of that is being said, but maybe some part of it they believe. Some of it is for domestic legitimacy. That's what makes them feel like they're, you know, holding up the. But part of it is a negotiating leverage, like they're, you know. But at the other, there's another practical level at which we did make deals with with the Soviets. We had an arms control system that really stabilized the world, so that we knew we're not going to go into a nuclear war. Like, and that happened with these same guys who were saying, you know, our goal is to completely destroy you.
Can I ask you a question, like geopolitically, like when you're negotiating with a country that has a dictator who doesn't have term limits, and you strike a deal, is there a world where like you can trust the longevity of that deal more than striking a deal with a president who only has a 4-year term and the next administration could just undercut that deal?
So for sure, which is one of the reasons why, for example, the Saudis, one of the things they've been holding out for in terms of this normalization with Israel, like deal, they said, we don't want just an executive agreement like the Iran nuclear deal. So they noticed that the Iran nuclear deal, the weakness was that a president could pull out. They said, we want a Senate-confirmed treaty.
That's interesting.
Right? Which, by the way, a president cannot unilaterally abrogate. So they...
I think that's smart.
They understood that, right? They understood that. And look, it hurts us more when you have an administration to administration, like massive change in policy. Like, look at the Trump. He pulled out of the Iran deal, and as I said, you kind of look at the situation now, he's going to have to, if he wants to stabilize the situation, he's going to have to make another deal. Yep. And by the way, it won't be that different from the original one. But I will say this, you know, people always think that because we're a democracy and we're messy and we're chaotic in foreign policy, the other side has the advantage because they're dictatorships and they have long-term view, and people say that about the Chinese now. I don't buy it. Look, we were up against the Nazis, we defeated them. We were up against the Soviets, we defeated them. We were up against Al-Qaeda, we defeated it. You know, the truth is, we are amazingly consistent, or, you know, in general. We are still on the banks of the Rhine, 75 years later, protecting Europe. We're still in Okinawa, protecting the Japanese. We're still on the DMZ, protecting the South Koreans. You know, we are the kind of crazy, messy, complicated Americans, but we've kept our word. In those places, you know, halfway across the world, we have our boys and women protecting those countries. We have not reneged on any of those commitments. I think we do a much better job than we give ourselves credit for.
Now, I agree with you. And it's also just because we're just superior Americans to everybody else. But it's something about when you emigrate here from another country, it makes you better. But I do think there's something interesting about this that lends itself to conspiracy a bit, in that in order to have these like long-term goals, it would be much easier to have and I hate this term, but like a deep state. And I think this is where like the American populace might start thinking like, well, is there a group of people within the country that are not necessarily elected officials that are plotting the course of America? And I don't want to make an argument for the deep state here, but like one might say that having that would maintain stability in our geopolitical process, even if it goes against the interests of Americans.
So I think you're raising a really interesting point. for the continuity, for stability, for professionalism and expertise, it is important to have some group of people who are on a, conducting things, whether it's in economic policy and foreign policy. But the thing to always remember is we have a very large, very powerful elected layer on top of that can change it anytime they want. And as Donald Trump is demonstrating,
right,
you can change all of that if you want to, right? And if you feel like you want to rip the whole thing up and you want to completely stop giving foreign aid to poor people all over the world, you can do it tomorrow, and it shuts down. Like those offices are dead; they're empty. Those people, those poor people, Americans who've been, were living in Ghana trying to help malnutrition, they're gone. They're like and it's all gone in 100 days, right?
Does that affect our relationship with these countries? The cuts.
It has to.
Of course, I think it. And look, it affects it also in like. We've always been the good guys. I mean, and that's, I think, no matter what you hear about anti-Americanism around the world, as somebody who grew up, everybody knew the Americans were the good guys. Everybody knew that if you were trying to figure out how to grow your crops better, how to irrigate the country you went to was the United States. The people who would give you the money, the know-how. Nobody thinks the Chinese will do that. They think the Chinese will do it in a totally self-interested way to help the Chinese. Whereas we've always had this sort of reputation for being willing to help the world rise up along with us. Even our trade policy was part of that. So, it's like, why are we screwing up something like that for 1% of the federal budget?